For those just joining us, it's a tense start to a tense topic. How will Nick deflect criticism for this one? He's done it. He can now comment on sensitive race-related topics.
Yes, I'm hopeful. Yes, I am hopeful for today. Take this music and use it.
Alright, so we started off pretty tame last time talking about collective authorship theory and auteur theory, and this time I wanted to talk about something that's equally as non-controversial. Racism. Well, actually, it's about Afrofuturism. It's a term that I'm sure you've heard before, but honestly, I more so wanted to talk about the origins of the term rather than what it actually means. For reasons I'll get into in a second here, what it actually means is kind of disputed, even though the article itself it comes from has one definition, and then Google and the culture, I guess, has kind of taken on different meanings for it, and I'm here to talk about that a little bit today. The origin of the term it feels like if the villains from Get Out had film degrees, if that makes any sense.
Well, I can't quite swing the hips like I used to, though. But, I do know Tiger.
Oh, that's great. But he wasn't just one particular Jewish man. This was a drawing of all Jews. Jewish people with big, long noses. Blacks with big, fat lips. Because all you left behind in this world is this.
The Holocaust?
Holocaust, yes.
What is that?
And similar to last week's episode, the reason I had to learn about this term was for my film themes and genres class, where we had to watch, I believe it was Black Panther, and for the assignments that week, we had to read the original PDF that this comes from, the original article. It's a 40-page essay from this guy named Mark Dery, and he's popular for coining the term Afrofuturism and also culture jamming. One word at a time. I don't know what culture jamming is. I didn't have to learn it, so I'm not going to talk about it. We had to read the article, and then we had to watch Black Panther, which, for reasons we'll get into later, Black Panther is one of the only examples of Afrofuturism that I think makes sense. With that said, let's jump into the article, which is titled Black to the Future by Mark Dery.
Damn! Rufus Griffin stars in Black to the Future.
I'm just going to read the full paragraph that is termed in because I don't really know how to condense it down. So it goes, speculative fiction that treats African American themes and addresses African American concerns in the context of 20th century technoculture and, more generally, African American signification that appropriates images of technology and a prosthetically enhanced future might, for want of a better term, be called Afrofuturism. And there it is. A term that you're going to see really annoying people on both sides of the aisle use for years to come. So I think that for the purpose of this essay, for this video, I think that works as a definition, but just for shits and giggles, we're going to look at what Google defines it as. I think that Google has a better definition of it. It says, a movement in literature, music, art, etc., featuring futuristic or science fiction themes which incorporate elements of Black history and culture. Also, according to Google, some examples include Black Panther, Black Panther 2. So what does make an Afrofuturism film? Some have argued that Sinners does because it has a black lead and black characters, and it has science fiction elements, and I haven't seen that movie, but sure, I guess. If we're going by Google's definition of it, then yes. This is my problem with the term. The term feels like it's separate but equal sci-fi. That's what I would define it as at this point. It feels like they're saying, well, it's science fiction, but with black people. And it's like, why do we need to differentiate that? Why can't it just be sci-fi? You know, of course I'm saying this as a white guy. I understand, believe it or not. Yeah, I'm white, but like I don't know why we need this term to differentiate science fiction and science fiction, but with black characters, you know?
And you think I named myself Black Vulcan? Hell no. I used to go by Supervolt. Black Vulcan was Aquaman's idea. And I said, well, maybe we should just call you Whitefish.
The definition of the term or how it's used isn't really my only issue with the term. As I said earlier, and I hopefully made clear, this is a 40-page essay of old Marky Mark being a white savior, interviewing black artists, not black sci-fi artists, mind you, most of whom disagree with him on several key points. So, let's talk about that. What are Dery's key points? Well, he starts the essay by comparing black people to alien abductees because of slavery, a sentiment which, while I get what he's trying to say, it sounds like an extremely, soy way of talking about the Atlantic slave trade.
And for the Gen Zs, a state-of-the-art interactive learning experience.
Is that a video game about the slave trade?
And then he goes on saying later that he says, this is a direct quote, how African Americans live out a sci-fi nightmare with impassable force fields of intolerance, and how technology is often brought to bear down on black bodies, referring to tasers and the Tuskegee experiment. Which, again, I get the comparison, I do, but it feels like he's kind of I don't know, it doesn't feel very respectful to talk about these really heavy themes and be it's like if you went to a Holocaust museum, right? And the director or whatever is going yeah, the Nazis wanted to take over the world and make a pure race, genociding entire communities that they deemed inferior to their own. Kind of like the Viltrumites in Invincible. Right. It's come on, dude. That's so weird. Jokes aside, I've read this article several times, and rather than break down key points, I'm just going to hit the highlights. Why? Because there aren't really any key points. He's just interviewing people that don't agree with him. So he begins by listing count them, two of a billion examples of this word that he made up. Those being milestone and an artist named, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, Ramelzi. He brings these two up after saying, and I quote, blacks are underrepresented in science fiction, whilst omitting to mention that Uhura, a black woman, was the face of Star Trek at the time. Not to mention the countless other black sci-fi characters from this era. Off the top of my head, they're Static Shock, Cyborg, Blade, Black Lightning, Black Panther, Geordie LaForge, the aforementioned Uhura, Lando Calrissian, Storm, and Luke Cage.
He asked 25 black people, name a black superhero who doesn't have the word black in it or an electric-based power. Oh, shit.
Those are just the ones that I know of. That's without using Google or anything like that. However, I will mention, to Mark's credit, the other point that he's trying to make is that there aren't enough black sci-fi creators. And in fact, of the ones that I just mentioned now, I believe the only two that were created by black people are Static Shock and Black Lightning. And I had to look that up, which is his other point, that they don't get enough recognition. Which, again, to my point, is that if they don't get enough recognition, why don't you shout them out in the article? This article is over 30 years old. I understand. I can't really hold this to the same standards of today. My point is, why are we being taught this? Why are we reading this article that is super outdated? Let's jump into the interviews, because I think that the interviews kind of display what I'm trying to get across here. His first interview was Samuel R. Delany. He was a black sci-fi writer. Of the three people that he interviews, this is the only one that is a sci-fi writer. This is the only guy who writes for sci-fi. My favorite interview in this whole thing is the interview with Sam. Let's take a shot for every time he uses a $10 word to sound smart. It was my understanding that social engineers, like the anti-capitalist technocrats... It's the first fucking line, too. ...whose slogan was, governance by science, social control through the power of technique, dominated sci-fi fandom in the late 30s, early 40s. Wasn't there an elitist, if not crypto right, slant to the literature from the very beginning? To which Samuel Delany responds, indeed, when you say that fandom was dominated by the right in the 30s and 40s, I don't even know what you could be referring to. Another classic line from this is when he interviews Greg Tate, another writer, not sci-fi writer, but he was another famous black writer. He recently passed away in 2021, rest in peace. Literally the first line of his interview is, why hasn't the African American community made more use either as writers or readers of science fiction? To which Greg Tate responds, I don't know that that's necessarily true. It's okay. It's bro, why even include that in the article? He's disagreeing with you. I appreciate the transparency, but come on, man. What was the point of this article? And for that matter, what was the point of this video? That's what I kept asking myself as I kept reading this article and writing the script and where am I going with this?
What did you... Wait a minute. I'm white!
Afrofuturism was made up by a white guy in 1994, and today it is being taught in film schools across the country. Even though in the article itself, the interviewees are disagreeing with him. This is insane! This is crazy. I feel like this video is way more disjointed than my last video. If you don't like it, then sue me. I didn't mean literally. Your Honor, my client's intolerance is not what's on trial today. If my client were, say, a bigot, then bigotry, I am not a racist. I am not racist. As if I could ever judge a person by the color of their skin. Never. Never. I just can't prove it. I know that this term is problematic. I just can't articulate it. You think this is bad? This chicanery? He's done worse. Ever hear of culture jamming? He made that the fuck up too. Dery. This is separate but equal sci-fi. And I learned it. I wish I didn't. What was I thinking? He'll never change. Never. Ever since he was 9. Couldn't keep his hands out of the cash drawer. But not Dery. Not our precious Dery. Robbing me blind. I worked my ass off to get where I am. And he gets to be a cultural critic? What a sick joke. I should have stopped him when I had the chance. I should have... You have to stop him. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to end the video. That's good enough. I think that's as good as it's going to get.